Welcome to Hidden Wisdom. Hidden wisdom exists to initiate truth seekers into the mysteries, gently guiding them toward a lived experience of the divine that awakens and transforms faith without dismantling family or community. This work is about faith renovation and expansion, learning how to inhabit your spiritual foundation more fully, allowing for depth, relationship, and wisdom to grow over time. I'm your host, Megan Farner. Here we explore Christ-centered esotericism, spiritual discernment, embodied wisdom, and the path of initiation, so your faith can mature, deepen, and become more alive. If you're seeking more and wanting to grow with care and integrity, you are in the right place. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Hidden Wisdom. I'm so excited to be joined today by Stacie Shifflet. Stacie is the creator of Modern Consciousness, a grounded, clarity-first framework that helps people understand their inner landscape, break the patterns driving their behavior, and finally choose their next season with intention. Her best-selling book, Treasure Map to Joy, brings this journey to life through a transformational parable. Her work is not woo-woo, not hype, not manifest harder. It's practical, courageous inner work that bridges awareness into actual change. Stacie doesn't tell people what to do. She teaches them how to finally see what's been inside them all along. And in that way, I think she is a very appropriate guest for Hidden Wisdom. Stacie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Megan. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Grow with care and integrity. I love it.
Yes, thank you. That is what we are trying to do here. So can you tell us a little bit more about your work? I understand that you have lived several different lifetimes, even in just this one life. Can you tell us about that?
I have so many. It's I've grew up. I went to work at 16 in a restaurant. I stayed in the hospitality industry for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. I went to college, but I quit. I'm pretty much self-taught, self-learned. I had some good mentors along the way. I have been in the technology field. And the culmination of that was doing the acquisition of a $50 million software company without any personal investment. Talk about faith and confidence in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a construction company. I raised llamas. I had a farm and I raised llamas for 10 or 12 years. I tend to reinvent. It seems I change things up about every 10 or 12 years. And now I have Modern Consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about just what was happening to you personally that took you through all of those different lifetimes and became Modern Consciousness and this framework that you use to help people gain clarity.
Sure. I seem to have a natural ability to reinvent myself. And, I have a lot of self-confidence, but my confidence is really different. It's not about being instantly good at something, right? Because we have to learn. But it was always trusting that whatever I felt led to do, and sometimes I was led to do these things, and we can talk about that a little bit, that I could learn it, adapt it, and eventually excel at pretty much anything. And Modern Consciousness came to be, actually, I was led to create that. Acquiring the software company, I actually was led to that. I literally woke up one morning and said, oh, I need to buy this company. And without having any experience, any knowledge of how such a thing would happen, let alone not having any money. But it happened. So, I made it happen, I guess, with help.
Yeah. Yes. So tell me, why do you think you were led to all of these different things? What was there for you to gain aside from just the experience of it?
Well, I actually think a lot of it is experience. I was very driven. I didn't realize until much later in life how strong my value of self-actualization was.
Hmm.
I didn't have a name to put to it until, I don't know, a number of years ago. But yeah, I just had a very strong desire and willingness to explore.
Mm-hmm.
and I followed my intuition and my ideas, and just kept stepping into different things, and opportunities would sometimes present themselves and I would step into those as well. But most of it was intentionally, um, designed, um, in a way, right? Like when I first
Mm,
left the restaurant business and went into technology, I did it with the intention. I had gotten married. I'm divorced now. I had gotten married, and I thought, well, I need a working environment that's more conducive to married life. So
mhm,
it was aligned intentionally in that way. And I made that change, and then just grew and grew in that space, that technology
mm.
space.
Got it. Thank you. So you mentioned your divorce, and I understand that that was a big part of kind of your journey, your transformation. We talk a lot about like death and rebirth types of cycles, and I assume that that was kind of a moment for you where you went through a little bit of an awakening. Is that the case?
Yes, loss can shut you down, or it could be a catalyst for greater
Mm,
things. Yeah, it was a very difficult time after I was married 28 years. So when the life that you had in the future you had planned, evaporates, just dissolves like that, and there is no going back, kind of what do you do? So about 2 years into that process, at first I did all the things I needed to do, and I was very fortunate because I had made money and had my own money, and I'm very organized and I'm good at getting things done, when I make a decision. But I got a house and all this stuff. Ramped up my social life, and about 2 years into that, I realized that I was still carrying a lot of anger and resentment, and I had to remind myself that my life was not going to evolve organically, that I have had to create everything in life, as we all do, by our choices.
mhm,
So I made the choice to not only figure out what was going on with me. I'm a huge nerd. So it was like, what is it about the human condition, right? So I set about on a very intense journey that's, I don't know, it's been going on since about 2014 now,
mhm,
um, to learn all about that, a personal development journey. Yeah.
mm,
And
mhm,
so I apply, my flavor of personal development. I apply all of my wisdom, all of my lived experience, um, my analytical skills, my connection with spirit, everything,
mm.
and brought it into that work.
Mhm. That's beautiful to be able to weave together all these different truths and to manifest from that. That's great. So your framework that you use with modern consciousness, you say that it helps people understand their inner landscape, break the patterns driving behavior, and allow them to choose their next season. Can you talk about those three pillars of how do you help people understand their inner landscape, break the patterns, and choose?
Well, I think there are two things that are often overlooked when we do personal development. And one of those is to gain absolute clarity about your current life.
Mm,
And that's really a deeply personal process, and we have to be vulnerable with ourselves. So I have a tool for that, that is called, well, it's called the clarity sequence. And that's the first, there are two pieces in that tool. And it's kind of like a GPS, right? If you don't know where you are, and I really find that many people really don't know where they are, right? They
mm,
think they know what the problem is, and they think they know where the frustrations are coming from. But that's really often not the case, right?
mhm,
So it really helps you see the truth of where you are across all areas of life with open curiosity, without self judgment, and to open that awareness and to see how each part of your life is intersecting and interacting with the other. We
mm,
tend to think of things in pillars, right? We
mhm,
tend to think of work or whatever. So that's the first part of my GPS, if you will. It's where you are.
mhm,
The second part of that is really sitting down and determining, okay, that's where I am now. How do I want to feel in each area of my life? And I do put it in terms of feeling rather than external achievements. We're so accustomed to creating goals that are external, right? So this is sort of internal. How do I want my marriage to feel? How do I want my home to feel? How do I want to feel when I'm, when I'm at work and when I'm with my friends and all of that? So the second piece of that is defining your aspirations in those areas. So once you know where you are and what you would like to move toward, then we can map a very practical application, very practically how to move toward what you would rather be experiencing in life. And for me, I call that charting your treasure map to joy.
Yeah, that's the title of your book, Treasure Map to Joy. And I love one of the things that was mentioned too is through your work, the idea that joy isn't something that's meant to be chased. It's something that naturally emerges when you understand this, right? When you apply this pattern, this framework that you have identified, joy is the natural result of that. Can you talk about that a little bit? And maybe what are some of the things that we get wrong when we're trying to pursue joy, and what's the actual experience of that?
I think that joy is not something we achieve, it's something we allow. And we forget that we can allow it in the small moments of our lives. And it's so important to do that. It takes being present with what you're doing. And of course, when you're present with whatever you're doing, you're not worrying about the past, you're not worrying about the future, you're not ruminating over these things. And it's it's so often we postpone it. We get it confused, I think, sometimes with happiness. We feel joyful, we feel happy, and they are very similar, but we sort of breeze through it. We don't sit and truly absorb it and feel it. I can be just as joyful as can be in the grocery store, so it's a very mundane thing. But if you are fully present with it and not rushing and thinking, oh, I've got to get out of here because I've got 14 other things to do, and you've got your head down and you're not smiling at people or saying hello and enjoying the process. I love to cook. I enjoy going to the grocery store. If you don't enjoy the grocery store, pick something else. And it's a matter of just being present. And what I have found over time practicing what I teach is then it becomes natural because it becomes habit, but it's a good habit. It's not a bad habit. It's a good habit.
So good. Thank you. What are some of the impacts that you've seen in your life and with people that you work with as they have applied this? What are some of the shifts that people have been able to make?
Well, for myself personally, I'm truly am a different person than I was, years ago, 15 years ago, let's say. And I think I see that people get a lot of comfort when they actually gain awareness and clarity and understanding of what really is going on. And I am one that truly believes that you have your own answers. But we don't get the right answers unless we ask the right questions. And that's something I learned over decades of consulting work, right? If you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. And I don't think that we allow ourselves to slow down and connect with ourselves, connect with spirit, source, whatever we desire to connect with, to really think about our experience. So I characterize this, and I think this is what my clients begin to embrace as well, is that when the busyness of your life creates the momentum, we're just trying to keep up with our schedules. So we have really lost the intentionality. Even if we've done things with good intentions, which normally everybody does, right? We're not really achieving the outcome that we wished. We'll focus that outcome on the objective, right? Like finish this project or get this job or whatever that means. And again, those things are all external. So it helps people to look inward and really appreciate the experience that is their life and
Mm.
what they're contributing to it. Right?
Mm.
Because so
Yeah.
often we tend to blame external forces for a lot of our woes. It's just kind of the way it is. It's a busy society, and it's kind of the way it is.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very human. So what are some of the practices that you recommend to help add that intention aspect, to help us be more present and be more, you, I guess, focusing our creative potential, right? That we are working towards transforming our life into something that we want, right? So how do you add intention into just your everyday life?
Well, I think when you know where you are and you kind of know where you want to go, charting a path to get there is important. I think that, what I see with clients is there are patterns that emerge. And we're not really aware of those patterns. But once we are aware of it, we can choose which pattern will have the most profound positive impact across our entire life.
Mm.
And so we prioritize that one and then create really some action steps to keep you focused on that, right? Because if we keep it in the front of our mind, then we can adjust as we go, because we'll easily fall into our current thinking habit. But when we're aware of it, we can say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, sorry. Let's
Mhm.
let's reframe that and put it in the terms of what we want to be creating, the experience we want to be creating instead. So, and sometimes those things are quite simple. Sometimes it truly is a mindset shift. And sometimes they're more complicated, right? If you're in a
Mm.
miserable marriage, for example, or absolutely hate your job, let's figure that out. We should not, God doesn't want us to be in a position that we're miserable every day of our lives. I
Mm.
truly don't believe that. We
Right.
have to appreciate the experience we're having, the lessons we're learning, the whole experience. The word just went right out of my head. But yeah, so that's kind of what we have to do, I think. And sometimes it's a very practical step. I had a client that her husband had retired. They'd been married for many, many years. They both did adore each other. But it was creating some tension, right? Because she was working. She was a school teacher, so she was off during the summers, which was nice. But when she went back to school, she was she was finding that she was getting irritated coming home because she knew that he would want attention.
Mm.
And often that's reverse, right? Sometimes the wife is at home, right, and they want
Mhm.
attention, when their husband comes home from work and they've been talking with people all day and they don't want to, but luckily they could communicate very well. And it was such an easy fix, not one that she necessarily would have thought of, I don't think, but it was opening up the communication and understanding and setting expectations, right? Where we go
Mhm.
wrong so often is that what either we or someone else is expecting, it's not up to our expectation. So if we define that expectation, so, it was a matter of communicating for her, and that really was her primary issue, right? So it's like, okay, so honey, tomorrow's Monday and I've got a tough day. And I'm not going to feel like XYZ when I get home. If I could have a half hour when I get home to change clothes and unwind, and if you could take care of dinner Monday night, that would be awesome. However, Tuesday, that movie you've wanted to watch on Netflix, how about we get, food brought in and we'll sit down and we'll have the evening together.
Mhm.
So just that communication and those simple things made such a profound change. And she had a partner that was very willing to work with her on that. So when I say sometimes things aren't that difficult, sometimes they're not, but we just don't, she didn't know what to do with all that frustration or
Mhm.
how to handle that.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's just becoming aware,
Yeah,
bringing
awareness.
bringing it to our consciousness, and then from there, the answers can flow, right? And we apply them. And yes, it doesn't have to be major shifts. What about some of the situations you find where actually this is a deeper ingrained pattern? There's some emotional trauma that's also underlying. Like, how do you help people address those scenarios? Do you have any examples?
I talk with a lot of divorced women, and especially ones that have been married a very long time. And, a common theme there often, and I prefer to work with people that have gotten over a lot of the emotional upheaval and are at least trying to steady themselves, not in, absolute crisis. That's different. Find a therapist, rely on, your church or whatever other resources that you have that can support you through that. I think that they so often say, I wasted, we'll give myself as an example, 28 years. Oh, I wasted 28 years of my life. Who wants to live the rest of your life believing that you wasted 28 years of your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's a very, very important to change that belief and start leaning into the things that you were grateful for and the good things that happened throughout those years.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us have built careers, we have children, we have families, we had great vacations, and it takes time. It took me time to adjust to my divorce as well. It does take time, but eventually you get to a point where you can reminisce about something that the family did years ago, when you were a family unit, in a positive way, rather than, oh, if I'd only known what he was doing at that time, or, I'll never have that experience again, or, oh my gosh, I thought, this was forever and it wasn't. So leaning into the positive instead of the negative. And it's really just a little step at a time. I mean, my belief on personal development and being the best version of ourselves really is incremental steps that we repeat over and over again, to create the next best version of ourselves. So often we try to make these huge leaps. Let's just create the next best version of yourself. And how do you define that? What is that? And then once they decide that, it's okay, how do we do that? So we create our next best version and we just do it again and again and again. The other side of that is we are the one constant in our life. We take ourselves everywhere we go. So who do you want on that journey with you? And I think when we put it in those terms, again, often people don't look at it in those terms. They're still feeling victimized, or, still harboring some resentment or what have you. And some of these women have a very tough time because they don't have the financial resources that I had, and things like that. So it's just do it a little bit at a time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, small, simple steps can take you a long way.
Absolutely.
As you continue with those. For sure. Well, I saw that you offered an emotional trigger workbook to our community, and I appreciate that. Can you tell us a little bit about that guide and how that might help people that are in this process?
Yes, it's a workbook. It's a series of questions to open up your perspective on your emotional triggers. And honestly, if there is only one thing you could change in your life that would have the most positive impact on your life, it is calming those emotional triggers. It gives you your power back. When you are when you're always reacting, you're out of your own power, and you're out of your centeredness in your being. So, and it's never really about the other person, this, right? With your work, whatever's triggering you is really not about the other person.
It's always a me problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a series of questions and prompts, which my programs are. Again, if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. And I'm really good at asking questions. Figure out what it is. What is it about that? You have the answer, right? My clients have the answer. Anybody that does the workbook, I don't have your answer, but I guide you to a self-exploration so that you can reveal the answer.
Yes.
And it's life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for offering that. What other resources do you offer, and where can people find more information?
Yes, I have a self-sabotage quiz.
Ooh,
That is
that's a good one.
also on my website. And with the quiz, you don't get just a quiz result. You get a series of emails that dives deeper into your primary self-sabotage habit and so on and so forth, right? That
Mm-hmm.
actions that you can take to try to overcome it, to better understand it. Like, how can perfectionism be a bad thing, right? How could that be a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing? Why is wanting to be perfect a bad thing? But there are shadow sides to that.
Mm-hmm.
The other resource that I have just recently put up on the website, it's another quiz, but it is your relationship to joy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you allow joy into your life? How does joy show up in your life? And it was an idea I had a few months ago and pulled it together. And it really tells you a lot about how you experience not only joy but your life, right? Or if you're postponing, and there are the other thing, particularly with the joy quiz that I do, is there is no right or wrong. One way that you relate to joy, right? If joy is just naturally yours, you would think, I tend at this point in my life, because I've worked hard on it, to just naturally be in joy. I always return to it. Now, you would think when you took that quiz that that would be the result that you would strive for. Other people delay joy. Other people hinge their joy on the opinion of others, or should this make me happy, right? Am I doing
Mm-hmm.
this the right way? Those kinds of things. But there's also a shadow side to those, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
If you are like me and you are just naturally joyful, which I've had to work at, by the way,
Yes.
I've developed it over time. The shadow side of that, for example, is glossing over things that are really issues, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
tend to say, okay, well, let me find the joy in this situation. Or, oh, we make excuses. And so we can ignore, because we put a filter of joy over everything, we might be ignoring bigger problems.
Mm-hmm.
So the results from that quiz are really interesting, because it goes into both sides of how you personally relate to joy. And
Mm,
all of that is
beautiful.
on my website. Yeah, modernconsciousness.com. And it's under programs. Those are all under
Okay.
programs.
Beautiful. I'll throw that up there. Yes, modernconsciousness.com. Those sound like fantastic quizzes. Thank you for your work in putting those together. Do you have any other final, just intuitive question or intuitive wisdom that you would mind sharing?
I trust yourself.
Hmm.
I really think that it is imperative that we trust and love ourselves, that we get to know ourselves, and that we treat ourselves as our best friend. Because if we can't be our own best friend, who else can do that for us?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I feel compelled to share right now.
Thank you. That's a beautiful message. Thank you, Stacie. Thank you for your journey and for all of the things that you have learned along the way and for your willingness to share them with our audience today. Truly
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
If you're ready to continue this work with guidance and shared language, I invite you into the Hidden Wisdom app, where faith is supported through renovation and expansion. If this episode resonated, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing, especially with someone you feel would be strengthened by this conversation. You can also send a donation to Hidden Wisdom via Megan Farner on Venmo. Link is in the description. These are some of the simplest ways to support this work and help it reach those who are quietly seeking. Until next time, trust what is unfolding. There is hidden wisdom all around you.